So I've been ranking a lot the past 2 weeks, hoping that I'd get out of gold as soon as possible. My soul was craving for these competitive ranked games after the whole preseason. Right now it almost felt like Ice Age just passed and everything frozen's back to what it used to be like. By that I mean everything. With the release of Dynamic Q, it solved tons of problems, especially problems teams would get in Champion Select, for example, someone being last pick and not able to play the role or champion he wanted and ended up having the last role that nobody picked, which is usually support. Or people straight up arguing where they should go, say a person on third pick just so happened to be a mid LeBlanc one-trick pony, and the first pick locked in Fizz, despite knowing that there's someone on the team that's only good at mid. Oh, and don't forget the Champion Select trolls where they would lock in Teemo regardless pick order and you would have to give him the role that he wanted. These are just a few problems the old Champion Select had, and there are of course many more other communication issues that lead to either someone dodging or, if not, having the whole ranked game experience ruined for both teams. Today I want to talk about the new Dynamic Q and problems that it solved, and also the different issues that spawned alongside with the release of this new Champion Select. Before all this, I would like to clarify that by Dynamic Queue, I mean both the queue system that allows players to queue up with 4 other players and the new Champion Select that came along with it. Now let's begin. To start things off, I would like to talk about the good things that Dynamic Queue brought to League of Legends and the issues it fixed. I think the biggest problem Dynamic Queue fixed was the annoying stress people would get every time they queue for ranked, not knowing if they'll get the role that they're good at. When you queue up for ranked, now you'll have to pick a primary or secondary role that you'll like to play. And the good thing about this is that you'll always get either one of the 2 that you selected. That means technically you'll only need to be good at 2 different roles to play ranked and not worry about playing bad in lane because simply that you're not familiar with the mechanics and knowledge of that role. Personally, I think this is really good comparing to the old solo/duo queue. Last season I was a support main, and the worst case scenario I would get in Champion Select would be getting matched with a bot lane duo. Whether or not their skills and performance will be better than mine aside, simply the fact that I'll now have to play with the 3 other roles that I'm not as familiar with is already bad enough. That means due to the Champion Select, the game would automatically fail to represent my actual skills and thus show an inaccurate result by the end of the game. It is like having a monkey, elephant, and a dog in a tree climbing race, and whoever wins the race will be the best animal. It's clearly not fair when you're not allowed to play the best role that you best perform at. That's why the new Dynamic Q did a great job at this and solved most, if not all, the problems getting the role that you want and having a more stable performance overall. Another thing I think Dynamic Q did well is that now it allows you to queue up with 4 other players to form a pre-made 5 if you wish. Again, this reduces the stress that a player would have in a ranked game, as the old solo/duo queue matches you up with at least 3 other strangers that you do not know. Not only did you have to worry about your own performance against the enemy laner, now you have to worry about the rest of the team because you simply don't know how well the other people will perform. League of Legends is a team-oriented game. Teamwork and communication exceeds all other aspects of the game. If the enemy team has great communication and synergy, no matter how good you are mechanically wise, you'll still lose the game because in fact, this is a team game. As long as you and your team work together and accomplish tasks together, your team would win. Now, Dynamic Q allows you to queue with more people, not only duo, but you can play with more. This greatly reduces the frustration that you would get when others are performing poorly. I mean, you wouldn't flame your friend because he did bad, because simply the fact that he is your friend and you both want to win and get better together. While there's a much higher chance that you would get frustrated and mad at the stranger that you will have to work together with for the next 30 minutes. There are a lot more benefits Dynamic Q brings, but I'll just stop here. Speaking of allowing players to queue up with 4 other players in a game, this leads us to the problems Dynamic Q brings to League of Legends. There's also the other side of the coin that we yet to discuss. I want to point out that while Dynamic Q allows you to play with people that you have good communication and synergy with, it also reduces the communication within the team. This sounds contradicting, but hear me out. let's use an example. Say if you queued up as a solo player and you got matched with a 4-man pre-made. They would have great communication among themselves while you are going to be completely left out for the whole entire game. Think about it, there's really no point for them typing or pinging on the map when they're all probably already in a voice comms like Skype, Discord, or TeamSpeak. You wouldn't know what they were planning on doing, you wouldn't know any of the calls made by the others, and you would most likely be left out during the laning phase because the jungler would not come to your lane, not even once. On one side, the 4 players will have much better communication compared to the old solo/duo queue games, but the lack of communication within the whole team would be even worse. Like I mentioned before, you will perform worse if you do not work together with your whole team, and lacking one player is lacking one player, and the 4 other players doesn't make a team. This can either be a minor issue as the 4 pre-mates carry the whole game, or it can be a horrible issue when they need you in the game and the lack of one player can lose the entire game despite the 4 others' communication is good. Final problem I'd like to address is the new lock-in feature. The new champion select, you would have to lock in champions and also bans. The system wouldn't lock the champion for you when you just hover it by the timer ends. You would be kicked from the champion select and be punished as a Q dodge. According to the developers, having the player to hit lock in champion select forces them to stay engaged with the game even in champion select, so that it's more important. But does the lock-in feature really achieve that? Surely it makes you stare at champion select that lasts for 7 years as the player can't decide what champion to ban. They can't decide whether to bench the Kench, but let's be real, there really isn't much to do in champion select other than knowing what laning opponent you're going to face and what runes and masteries to take accordingly. There's really no communication during that process and actually makes the game any more interesting or better. The only thing I can think of that the team can discuss on that's part of a strategy plan during champion select is whether or not they should invade or how they're going to prevent the enemy team from invading. That's really it. What's the point of staying in champion select screen and stay engaged when there's really nothing to be engaged with? I mean, yes, it certainly makes players care more about the champion select as they now have to lock in or else they'll dodge, but that's all. I'm not saying people shouldn't be engaged with the team, but when they're only staying there because they have to lock in the champion just so that they don't dodge the game is not what we want to have. All in all, I think Dynamic Queue solves tons of problems compared to the old champion select queues and system that it had, especially those game-breaking arguments that lose you the game even before the game starts, which is great, but also generate tons of other problems that screws up the game in certain situations. Although it sounds like we didn't make any progress, but I think it's great that Riot put in the effort and tried to do something about it. It's always great that Riot put in the effort and tried their best in improving our gameplay experience. Anyway, that'll be all today. Let me know down in the comments what other problems that you think Dynamic Queue brings or how it solves past problems. Please do leave a like if you enjoyed this video and find it interesting, dislike it if you actually dislike it. So yeah, stay salty summoners and I'll see you on the Rift.